President Trump today named North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism. The decision was announced during a cabinet meeting. The president said this designation will impose even more penalties on the country. Mr. Trump called the move a long overdue step in putting pressure on the regime.
Today, the United States is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. Should have happened a long time ago, should have happened years ago. In addition to threatening the world by nuclear devastation, North Korea has repeatedly supported acts of international terrorism, including assassinations on foreign soil.
Meanwhile, President Trump's top nuclear commander says if he got an order for what he would consider an illegal launch, he would reject it. While speaking at a security conference in Nova Scotia on Saturday, General John Hyten noted even the commander-in-chief's power has its limits.
The way the process works is it's simple. I provide advice to the president. He'll tell me what to do, and if it's illegal, guess what's going to happen?
You say no.
I'm going to say, Mr. President, it's illegal. And guess what he's going to do? He's going to say, what would be legal? And we'll come up with options of a mix of capabilities to respond to whatever the situation is. And that's the way it works.
Joining me now on set is CBS News Radio military analyst Mike Lyons. Mike, thanks for being here.
Hi.
Let's start off with the president's announcement. What is the significance of making North Korea a state sponsor of terrorism?
Well, they actually were on the list, and the Obama administration took them off to try to bring them to the table. But these are just additional sanctions that we'll put now on North Korea. We'll never sell them any arms. It'll be no diplomatic type operations, any dual purpose things that they could use for military access, we won't sell them. So to go with the sanctions that we already have on them, it's really just a formality. Now, this is a State Department designation that 3 other nations are on as well. You've got Iran, you've got Sudan, and you've got Syria.
Cuba was recently removed, correct?
Cuba recently removed. And again, this was by the previous administration, and it's used to negotiate, get them to the table to bargain. And that's why the Obama administration took them off.
What is North Korea's response likely to be?
Well, they'll probably respond rhetorically as they do. They are not interested in getting to the table right now because the race is on for them to develop this nuclear capability as well as the missile technology they have. They feel that they won't be able to negotiate from any position of strength until they have that capability and can demonstrate it. So they're going to likely try to hold themselves up and not respond in a manner to get to the table because they don't want to negotiate.
Now, what do you make of General Hyten's comments of resisting an illegal nuke action by the president?
Wasn't surprised by his comments. They are all about the law of land warfare, which is all about military necessity, distinction, making sure we only attack military targets, and then also proportionality. There are those who argue that a first strike use of a nuclear weapon is illegal, especially against a country that we don't know has them or could strike back at us. But his comments are in line with what I would expect the Stratcom commander, the 4-star that does that. The bottom line is the president just can't wake up and order the bombing of North Korea, a city, for example, that would kill millions of civilians without any real military necessity behind it.
Sure. Now, can you walk us through the chain of command as it stands now when it comes to ordering nuclear strikes?
So those procedures were developed during the Cold War, and in most cases in response to a counterattack to somebody attacking us. So the process is somewhat complex, but it's designed to respond very quickly within literally minutes should somebody launch a nuclear strike against the U.S. But for a preemptive strike, it's a little bit different. You'd have to go through different military channels, and in some cases you would hope that you'd have these procedures already worked out on some level. But the bottom line is this: the president is the sole authority for making this strike, legitimate or not. He decides the strike is going to go. He sends an authentication code to the Pentagon. And from there now, the authentication to actually fire the weapon system requires 2-person control. You need at least 2 people on both sides of this process to make sure they have the right codes and the right procedures in order to launch a nuclear weapon.
Who would those people be? Who would those 2 people be?
So in different services, it's either those in the Navy with submarines, in the Air Force with Minuteman ballistic missiles. But they have these safes that are down at the lowest levels where those things are stored. and they would get the authentication codes. And again, both of them together create the kind of capability that we release the missile. So there's not a chance for, let's say, mutiny, for example. Along the way, let's say the president delivers an illegal order, and let's say he fires that person who refuses to bring it down, brings in somebody, colludes at that top level. The bottom line is, as the message goes through the chain of command, at some point, the two people could say that's an illegal order. We can't authenticate that message. They'll go back up to the top.
So there are safety mechanisms in place.
Yeah, there are. Again, it's all about the illegality of that order based on proportionality, military necessity, and whether or not the U.S. is imminently threatened.
Right. Now, of course, we all remember the president's promises for fire and fury under certain circumstances. Do the general's comments dial that back a little bit?
Well, I think the general's comment tried to explain what the chain of command is and what things would look like. I think in our conventional war capability, we would likely start something, if you think about that. Again, but starting a conventional war with North Korea has so many other tremendous implications at this point. But I do believe that from the United States' perspective, previous administrations, for example, have had a no-use first-strike nuclear policy, which somewhat makes sense against especially other countries that don't have that capability. You'd violate the law of land warfare.
Right. All right. Well, Mike Lyons, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thanks.